Hi, my name is Joseph and welcome to Digimon Seekers Chapter 4, Part 6, Sons of Chaos, Seekers. So let's begin with the first quote. It all happened too fast for Marvin the Songsmith to process. One instant, Todorus's hollowized form was there, and the next it was gone. E.g., the Digipolice squad leader and the three prototype Digimon vanished as well. Did they just get transported? Did it just crack the gateway? He wondered out loud, raising his fist in celebration within Ergimon's Digicore. What happened? Where is Ryudimon? Where is the squad leader? Sasaki said in a daze. Had she truly been sent to the deaths? As she had, then perhaps she avoided instant death at the hands of the Royal Knight, which was a silver lining. Omegamon gathered themselves, pulling their extended back foot in towards their body and drawing the sword up to inspect it for any sign that they shook its target. The blade was clean. Omegamon let out a powerful sigh of lament. The lone knight, entrusted with keeping humans out of the Royal Knight's sacred realm, allowed three of them to infiltrate the deaths. A cruel fate for a cruel angel. If Omegamon turned around and targeted Marvin or Satsuki, they and their Digimon will both be dead. So, what I really love about this quote, let's begin with Omegamon really quickly. Obviously, Omegamon's not really serving as an antagonist, but rather more as a force of nature that's obstructing the goal of the protagonists. I would say that they're more a neutral force. As it states right here, their goal is to stop anyone from infiltrating the digital world, the realm of the Digimon. And unfortunately, this Omegamon has failed. I love how when it kind of reminds me of a well a little bit, not just in terms of size, but in the way that whales, when they do their cries, it sounds very lamenting, sounds very bittersweet, very sad, as if, even though they're in a pod, it's as if they're communicating with some other whale so far away. When the Omegamon lets out a powerful sigh of lament, I really think of maybe not a whale-like noise, but something similar to that style of emotion that it invokes, right? So not the sound is alike, but the kind of emotion that it brings out from people who hear those sounds. I feel like that's something similar to that. A cruel fate for a cruel angel. The description of Omegamon and cruel angel, again, just really emphasizing the neutrality of the Omegamon. It's not doing what they're not doing what they do because they hate humans or they hate the outcast Digimon, but it's just part of their code. I'm not going to read this part, but in fact, later on, it states that Omegamon chooses just to leave, and it leaves in a weird angle and dives back into the digital gate because at that point they understand that, well, as it states right here, they failed in their main goal, their main objective that's not encrusted, but that's pinned into Omegamon's AI. I'm not going to read that part just because it's a smaller part, but since I did mention it, one aspect I kind of don't like about that, the AI aspect, it's just Seekers, I felt like, was emphasizing that despite them being digital monsters, being AI creatures, that they were still alive, they still had a society. But at this point in the story, I kind of feel like they kind of are reneging on that a little bit, kind of going back and forth. I wish that they'll just they'll go all in by saying that Digimon are alive, they're sapient, and they have their cultural values and their own set of little villages and traditions and everything like that. Anywho, coming back to this quote, though, what I also like about it is just the excitement that Marvin has, and I suppose in connection to that excitement, the loyalty, the way that despite his confusion, he closes his fists in celebration. I think that's really cool and just very telling of Marvin's character. And then of course Satsuki, the way that she's worried right away about Yolene, despite the fact that Omegamon is still right there. What happened? Where is Ryudimon? Where is the squad leader? I just really like the show of concern that's being displayed by both of these characters. But yeah, so moving on forward. Marvin hollowized himself. Thanks for the assist, he said to Satsuki, who sat beside the wrecked Minikorimon. Where is Ryudimon? Where is my squad leader? Satsuki asked wearily, hanging her head. Hey now, if we keep bickering, we're going to be in some real trouble, Marvin said, holding his hands up near his head. I asked you where my squad leader is, you criminal, so that's how it is. Look, I lost friends too, Marvin offered, scratching his head. He looked at the SOC's leader's Digimon that Minikorimon shot down before glancing at his virtual monitor. They were sending out a distress signal. Do not mention the squad leader in the same breath as those discussing code crackers. Wow. The Japanese police, everybody. Listen, my fight's done. It's time for love and peace and all that. Now, if you excuse me, I've got my own crap to take care of. I'm going to help the friends that you shot down and clean up these mega level Digimon. I'll be seeing you, Deputy Squad Leader, Marvin said as he activated his collection tool. The tool gathered the half-frozen Chaos Dramon and the two mega-level sacrifices Tartarus left behind into a Digimon dock while Marvin focused on helping his fallen comrades. He turned back to Satsuki once he finished. Okay, I'm gonna head back to our Waslam base now. Later, Satsuki couldn't help but react and turned slightly toward Marvin as he walked away. Sorry, didn't mean to be rude. Feel free to join me if you're about to cross the line. I could probably fix up your Monokuri, Mon. As the previous quote in the first half, I love how it added more to the character's death. Same thing with this quote, further emphasizing not just Marvin and how he's loyal to Tartarus, but loyal to the group as a whole. He has to go help out the individuals who have been hurt during this battle. He's not forsaking them, he's not forgetting about them. And he's also keeping in mind that he has his own objectives that he needs to do. Yet, despite that, though, I did notice how friendly and how helpful he was acting towards Satsuki, despite the fact that they're both on opposite sides, right? And I love how this quote ends, sorry, didn't mean to be rude. Feel free to join me if you're about to cross the line. I could probably fix up your Monokuri launch. That last line, I could probably fix up your Monokuri mind. What better way to show someone else that you could definitely trust them than by helping out their loved ones, right? So in other words, if this was flipped, if Marvin and Erjumon was hurt and Satsuki and Nunimon / Monikorimon were A-okay, if she had offered to help Erjumon, I'm sure Marvin would take that to mean that he can trust and depend on Satsuki more than he first thought about, right? So in this instance, he's doing the same thing, but with Satsuki. I really do appreciate and enjoy that. And of course, Satsuki is really reinforcing her own loyalty. She's already demonstrated her loyalty to the Digipolice and to Satsuki in the same way that Marvin has for the Sons of Chaos. In the previous part, in the way that she could have chosen just to be loyal to Yolene and asked the Digipolice to continue fighting, despite the fact that she had strict orders from Yolene that if anything happened to her, that everyone should retreat to protect themselves. Satsuki made sure to take care of that order, but from her own personal volition, she made the choice to come back and help, try to help at the very least, Yolene. So I love how these two characters, Yolene and Marvin the Songsmith, how they're essentially two sides of the same coin. Despite being on different sides, I just said opposing forces, they act similarly. They both have the same ideologies, same kind of mindset, keeping in mind the leader, but also the group that the leader is in charge of. I'm just looking at the, of course, Satsuki. Also like the dialogue itself that's being used between Satsuki and Marvin. The way that Satsuki doesn't back down. Oh, don't say Yolene's name with those disgusting code crackers names. And then Marvin's response, wow, the Digipolice, everyone, right? That just seems so very real, like as if he's talking to someone in real life. I think they did a great job with the interaction right here. It feels very organic and natural. I appreciate it as a reader. Moving forward, a level surface and we can hollowize, which means there is a three-dimensional rendering power here. Everything's a bit more straightforward than I imagined it would be, Koski said. I always picture the depths as some sort of wild place full of untouched nature, like a rainforest or something, Iji said, hollowizing himself into the void. That's what the videos and the DDL lobby suggested it would be like anyway. We Digimon have no particular affinity for the abundance of nature you find in the real world. We're not humans after all, right, Logomon? Doraemon asked. Speak for yourself. I was raised in the Waslam, and my memory is hazy at best, Logomon shot back. They clearly didn't share Ichi's unease at being in a seemingly infinite void. He took Doraemon's point, though. Ichi grew up in the city, so nature was somewhat foreign to him as well. Something he only experienced on camping trips or some other planned outdoor activity. Even the footage of rural towns and farming communities meant to evoke nostalgia in other people didn't really connect with him. His grandparents all lived on the outskirts of Tokyo. So this passage I think is really awesome. It makes me wonder if when they being the writers, when they first came up with this passage, did they keep in mind the reaction of the fans, of the audience? Because I actually did mention this as my question for the last video. How is the digital world going to look? And as this pointed out in the DDL, we did get some projections of a forest, a forestry landscape, a lot of tree, a lot of growth. But as we're finding out, at the very least, maybe they're not in the digital world proper. They're in the depths, which could be separate from the rest of the digital world. But in the place that they're in currently, it looks nothing like that. Essentially, it's just a big white I don't even want to say room, but kind of a big white space that at the very least there is a floor that one can stand on. So it's void, but when they say void, it's not blackness that they're in, it's a void of whiteness. So I think that's really cool. It does make me think of something sterile. Not really as something hospital like, but does make me think of something computer slash digital. Like what I mean by that is obviously if one has ever worked with computers, one needs to get rid of any static that they might have, right? So they don't work in a sterile environment, but definitely in a quote unquote clean environment that's not conductive to static shocks and everything like that. Um, so yeah, so then that is curious. We're going to shortly see in another passage again how the deaths might be a separate location from the digital world itself. So maybe the imagery that that's present in DDL, maybe that is true, just not for this part of the digital world. I also like how they bring it up as a connection to the real world, kind of really emphasizing this reminding the readers that this setting of the world of Seekers takes place in a cyberpunk setting. Typically in a world like typically in a setting like cyberpunk, there's not a lot of greenery, not a lot of trees. If there's any plantation vegetation that is present, is going to be in the affluent areas, the areas that's meant for the upper class, right? Not for the rest of the common folk, or because I've been reading Song of Ice and Fire, the small folk, quote unquote. But one knows what I'm referring to, right? Even if one plays Cyberpunk 2077, for example, it's mostly just a city landscape, some greenery in the rich areas, and then beyond the city, it's just desert, not a lot of green at all. So I really love how this passage reminds the reader that they are in a cyberpunk setting, and the protagonist himself, he might be human, but he's not used to greenery because of where he grew up in, and that's definitely going to be true for people who do grow up in the city, um, like within downtown Tokyo, New York, downtown Chicago, and so forth, right? So I do really like this passage. I feel like it really connects to the audience in a not in a meta way, but it's as if the writers kind of anticipated the response of the audience, and that's why we have this section. Also, as always, do like Logomon's responses to everyone that he communicates with. It's like again, he knows how to work in a team, but for whatever reason, he just always needs to have that little spunk within him, that little extra spark of a rebellious uh, uh, rebellious nature. Continuing forward, it was impossible to it was impossible to tell what was going on in Koski's mind, but he was clearly energized. Not that they cracked the gateway. The digital world was his life and had been taken over and had been ever since he was in college. He'd been at this longer than E.G. had been alive. E.G. wasn't about to lie and say he understood what all this meant for Koski. Nevertheless, they shared a common goal, rescuing someone close to them who got DMIA. They had to find Leon and Saya. So what is this place? Logomon sniffed, raising their nose into the air. There's a bunch of scents in the air that don't really add up to anything. There's something here, but there isn't. It's like we're in a giant's belly. A giant? E.G. asked, voice slightly trembling with uncertainty. Yeah, if you think of hell as a giant, it eats anything and everything. Eventually, Logomon replied. But they were in the depths, weren't they? That's where they were supposed to go after they cracked the gateway. Then again, the vast nothingness, but for the brightness, they make him feel like he was trapped in some sort of monster slumbering in the depths. Ooh, nice one, Logomon. I didn't know you had a flair for the poetic, Doromon cracked. Shut it, Logomon snarled, baring their teeth. This is the source domain, Koski announced. So give me a quick second. But the first portion I like about this is just the further highlighting of E.G.'s character, of him being able to connect with essentially his empathizing skills. E.G. wasn't about to lie and say he understood what this all meant for Koski. Nevertheless, they shared a common goal. So I love how E.G. recognizes that despite him and Koski coming from a similar place, for Koski, there's a lot more at stake for him because he's been at this for a longer amount of time and has a personal connection to this. So I just love how E.G. recognizes that although they are similar, they're not one for one. There's still some slight differences, and E.G. is able to recognize that. But despite those differences, he knows that again in their similarity, they have a common goal to rescue someone who are gone DMA. For Koski, that's Saya, his fiance slash friend, and for E.G., that's going to be Leon's and Postmon slash his friend slash best friend, and I suppose also Agumon, Black Agumon, right? Excuse me for forgetting Black Agumon. So yeah, so I really appreciate that line. And also, as always, I always love again how Logomon well, first of all, this mention of Tartarus, the being in the belly's stomach. It really reminds me of Greek mythology. And again, everyone is unaware, Tartarus in Greek mythology was the deepest lair. That was where all the Titans were cast after Zeus and his siblings outcast and took control. Um, and sometimes in some, I don't know if it's Greek, but in other mythological stories, sometimes Tartarus, quote unquote, or hell, is the belly of some kind of beast. So I'm just really appreciating and enjoying all these mythological connections. And it's funny that Logomon's the one who's stating this as well, right? Because it is kind of a poetic thing to say in the situation that they are in. And I would argue that most of us probably wouldn't expect that to be coming from Logomon. We probably expect that more from Koski or Doromon. And so I love how Doromon does make a highlight of this. Oh, Logomon, nice. I didn't know you had a flair for the poetic. And it is supposed to be a joke because of the word that's used. Doromon cracked, right? If he was being sincere, it would have said something like Doromon highlighted, noted, was impressed by, but instead cracked, right? So he's making a joke. Shut it, Logomon snarled, baring the teeth. Again, his reaction always just so rash and full of energy. The digital world was born of noise and chaos and information without context. This is a place full of ancient data, not long forgotten, known as the source domain. Ancient. Only old Digimon can access it. That or Digimon that are compatible with older standards, such as Koski charted off, such as prototypes, Doromon said, showing off their interface. They turned to look at Ryorimon. Ichi chirped at the start. He saw Ryorimon's eyes open ever so slightly. They weren't fully conscious yet, nor could they move on account of their restraints, but they were coming around. Our old interfaces grants us access, and since you're all fused to our Digicores, you got to come along for the ride. There, now you're all caught up, Deputy Squad Leader. Yolene hollow-eyed herself. So in the last passage, we end with Koski saying that this is the source domain. And I wanted to read this passage too because I love the description that we get of the source domain. So this is why I'm thinking maybe it might not be the digital world itself, because as it's explained right here, this is a place full of ancient data not long forgotten, known as the source domain. Only old Digimon can access it. That or Digimon that are compatible with older standards. So this is a part of the digital world that's essentially sectioned off. It seems like it's no longer accessible. And in fact, I don't recall I'm going to read this passage, but there is a quote within this part that states that Doromon explains they don't have to worry about Omegamon coming because more than likely he doesn't have access to this part of the digital world. It's not part of the part they're supposed to protect. It's not part of their code since the deaths, this specific portion, is just not part of the main digital world, it seems like. So even if, if the digital world is lush and green, I love that the writers are making this decision to keep us separate from us being the readers, because an audience member, thank you so much, I wish I had your name down, they pointed out last week in a comment that we just don't have enough time to set up this beautiful landscape and describe the digital world. Everyone's ever seen like Digimon Saviors, for example, when Masaru and Tomo's already been there, but when Masaru first goes in, we just don't have enough time to set up all that context for the digital world. So what better way to skip that context, not this barren white landscape that they're currently in, that I personally believe still fits with the theme and aesthetics of the digital world and Digimon in general. So I really like this passage that the writers decided to take. And then going forward, I also like how Yolene wakes up. I appreciate the respect for the audience's time for this passage. I like how the catching up for Yolene was quick and simple. Literally just on my screen, just 3 lines and she's all caught up. It is an extreme example, but it reminds me a lot about The Wire, the HBO show. In the first season, they take quite a bit of time explaining how a wiretap is set up. That's why it's called The Wire. But the following seasons, they show less and less of that because the writers of The Wire, understood that we, the audience, already knew how it was set up due to the first season. And in fact, by season, I think there's 6 seasons for The Wire. By season 6, they don't even show the setting up of The Wire. Minor spoilers. They just jump right into it. Why? Because they respect the audience's time. They'd rather take that screen time to tell their story. I get the same feeling in this as well. Let's skip the lush digital world. Let's catch up Yolene quickly in order to continue with the storytelling, the main narrative that the writers want to tell. I'm also happy that Yolene is back as well. I was concerned that she would be unconscious for the duration of this. Koski, she shouted as she showed up to him, fire in her eyes. She would have punched him if she could. Apologies, Yolene, but this was the only way. You wouldn't have helped me, no matter how nicely I asked. Wait, the gateway. What happened? She demanded as the confusion set in. She'd been unconscious ever since her fight against Dorogurumon, unaware that they successfully entered the gateway. We cracked it. This is what lies on the other side. Yolene's words caught in her throat. I'm going to stop right here. I do want to continue further, but this is kind of split up in two. The first part that I read, I only included it because, again, I felt like this was an instance of where the writers for Seekers anticipated the reaction of the audience. Because I actually brought this up I think twice in previous videos where I said I really wish that Koski would have relayed his plans to Yolene. Maybe she would have been willing to help. And although it's just really quickly, we don't get much more of an explanation besides for this quote right here. I still really am happy that they included this. Apologies, Yolene, but this is the only way. You wouldn't have helped me no matter how nicely I asked. And I think now that we've gotten this far with these characters, I think we can understand Yolene's point of view, right? Again, seems to be stoic in terms of following rules. Not stoic, rigid in terms of following rules, right? She seems to be more black and white, while Koski is a bit more willing to navigate within the gray. So yeah, I just like this line because this is something that I was curious about. I do wish that they were working together, but I also understand that sometimes people's personal ideologies can prevent them from working directly with one another. It's not until at the very end when they start working together due to circumstances such as this. So continuing forward, an unprecedented criminal act had taken place as a direct result of her blunder. A direct result of her blunder. Oryoromon bested Dorogoromon. The mission failed because she hesitated. She'd proven unable to counteract the almost gravitational pull between Koski and Saya. That was a hiccup. The Digipolice watched Oromon fight and withdraw. Your deputy, however, fought to the last. She even deployed a Mega-level Digimon to try and rescue you and Ryudomon. Sasuke, no! She deployed Burgojamon. Yolene's blood ran cold at the thought that Sasuke deploying a top-secret Digimon. No one could fully control Burgojamon. It wasn't meant to be deployed in combat scenario. So I wanted to split this up just because for this portion of Yolene, I love how when we got Sasuke's perspective, she was so concerned about Yolene. Now we have Yolene's perspective, and she's also concerned about Sasuke. So this care for one another, I love how it's going two ways. I also love how she recognizes that although she was about to win, technically she did win, right? Oromon did beat Dorogoromon. The mission only failed not because of the battle itself, but because of her own emotional I don't want to call it drawbacks because it seems like a weakness, but because in this instance, she only hesitated because it's true. There's a chance of Saya being rescued. Then, of course, she's going to falter a little bit. And that's exactly what Koski's trying to do right here. He's trying to rescue Saya. So why would subconsciously Yolene want to stop that? Thus, Koski ending up getting the winning hand. Even though technically it's true, Oromon bested Dorogoromon. So I just love how this simple fight has a bit more complexity when we stop and think about it, we being the audience. Technically, again, Koski may have won, but he also technically lost. And Yolene, she may have lost, but she also technically won. I just really appreciate the complexity of that statement, and I think it's really cool. And then, yeah, that's essentially it moving forward. Koski, what happens to Sasuke? She's not my responsibility. The digital world was a battlefield for code crackers and Digipolice alike, and Koski used that shared viewpoint to his advantage. His response would put a stop to her questions, if nothing else. I don't know what happened after we cracked the gateway, but I know my second in command is a gentleman, so I trust he's treating her well. We've seen enough people go DMIA. Hang on, you two know each other? E.G. interjected. This is not how we've seen any conversation between a cop and a criminal play out. How else would Yolene, the Digipolice's top brass, know Todoro's real name, let alone be on a first-name basis with him? He heard they had a past, but not one this deep. There's no use in hiding anything seeing as we're in the source domain. Where else can everything be laid bare, if not here, Koski said. He gave a brief history of their time as Professor Ridgely's students working side by side in his lab. Iji knew the head of the Digipolice had been a student of the professor's, but it was quite the revelation that both of them were founding members of the venture that became Aberdeen Electronics. So, really quickly right off, the ending of that passage, just like with the previous one where I appreciated the writers respecting the audience's time, I appreciate that once again with this bit of the passage, the ending part that I just read, because again, Koski could have made things more complicated, right? Like those teen dramas where he would say something like, it doesn't matter what history that we have. What matters is now we got to keep moving forward. And then each would be like, oh, well, yeah, I guess that's true, right? I might be shocked about you two knowing one another, but that doesn't matter. Just keep moving forward. I love how Koski takes the time to explain the situation. And although it may be a brief history, I think the use of brief is being done on purpose, not as a way to make Koski seem like he's speeding through it, but because as the audience, we understand that they have a long history. If Koski was to fully unravel the full extent of the history, this would be a lot longer of a passage, and we'll probably need another part. It will end right here and with Iji's reaction to this whole story, right? But instead, again, I love how it's just this one's about what 2 lines. He gave a brief history of the time as Professor Ridgely's students working side by side in his lab. And the last 3 lines is from Iji's point of view, him connecting those dots. So again, as an audience, as the reader, I really appreciate that streamline of information. One could argue that this is being done to smooth the story forward. It's a small plot hole, not a plot hole, but just a way to get things moving along. But I would disagree with that because again, the fact that they're mentioning it shows that the writers had it in mind, but they wanted to mention it in such a way that it didn't interrupt the storyline, that it didn't ruin the pacing of the story. Going to the beginning part of this quote, again, what I said last passage of how Yolene cares about Satsuki. I love how right away she asks what happened to Satsuki, knowing that she utilized the Mega level Digimon. And although Koski seems very cold in his response, she's not my responsibility. I just really love and appreciate I keep saying I gotta say different phrases, but I really enjoy the relationship between these characters. One could really tell that Marvin has trust with Koski and vice versa as well. And we start the story by seeing Marvin's his gentleman-like ability to look beyond one's role as an enemy and start treating them as an ally, right? Because he mentions to help Satsuki, who even helped Minukurimon if she'll allow it. If she'll allow him to assist. And we see right here that Koski is aware of what kind of man, what kind of individual Marvin is. I love this little line. I don't know what happened after we cracked the gateway, but I know my second in command is a gentleman. So I trust he's treating her well. We've seen enough people go DMIA. So even though he's saying she's not my responsibility, that line as well, we've seen enough people go DMIA. He's not completely heartless. He just wants to get the objective completed. And he wants to get the objective completed while also keeping in mind the people's lives, that no one goes into a coma. Again, as a reminder, the Sons of Chaos is known as none of the members ever going into a DMIA. So despite his code nature, we know that it's just a ruse. It's just part of his facade. He does care about the people. It's just that he wants to complete his objective. So I really did like this line. I think it adds so much to Koski, Yolene, and then it connects really well with the beginning part between Marvin and Satsuki. Only prototype Digimon can access the source domain. The Royal Knights are not permitted to enter. Oh, they don't have the credentials? Phew, that's a relief, Iji said, his shoulders dropping as relief came over him. The source domain is also outside the system administrator's purview, so it's not even in the index of domains the Royal Knights are sworn to protect. This is something of a lost world, if you will. One that's still very much part of the digital world, but different. Huh, okay. Theoretically, anyway, this is all my own conjecture. What? Please tell me you're joking, Iji yelled. I mean, worst case scenario, I'm wrong. The Royal Knight that was after us shows up, and we all meet an unfortunate end. The end. No, I'm not picking up any hint of that rust bucket in the air, Logomon said, sniffing rhythmically. Can't pronounce words sometimes. This domain holds what but we, the SOC, seek. The sacred chalice. There should be an ancient and forgotten temple of sorts here, perhaps behind some ancient administrative privileges. Every single thing you say about this place makes my fur stand on end in a good way. This source domain place is wild, Logomon said, looking around. There wasn't much to see. It was a completely white, formless space. Just because it couldn't see anything didn't mean there was nothing to see, however. At minimum, there was a floor, and they hadn't been deleted out of existence yet, which was nice. So I love how this reminds me a little bit of like Godzilla -1. Minor spoilers, but I won't be specific. Towards the climax of the movie, the good team, Operation Batasumi, they utilize a decoy ship, and Godzilla utilizes his atomic breath. And then the crew is, of course, afraid. Now the rest of the ships, they say we need to retreat. What happens if Godzilla utilizes that breath again? And Mr. Noda explains that was just a one-time use. Let's go ahead and move forward. He didn't really have any that was essentially just conjecture on his end. He was deducing, looking at the information available before him. I can't help but feel like Doraemon's doing the same thing right here. I love the explanation that he gives to the rest of the group that Omegamon probably won't be coming in this domain due to the fact that, again, it's old ancient data, and as he explains, it's cordoned off. It's separated from the rest of the digital world. It's not even the index of domains the Royal Knights are sworn to protect. This is something of a lost world, if you will. So again, kind of highlighting why this is a formless white space versus that lush green maybe one may have been anticipating or expecting. Again, I personally don't mind that. But all this is just conjecture, and I love how Doraemon admits it, and then he states as well that either I'm correct or if I'm not correct, then it's just the end, right? It's just very matter of fact. I think it says a lot about Doraemon's character. It adds, it re-emphasizes again that not that he's careless, but just like Kosuke, they both share a very let's get the objective done, and we'll figure out things as we continue moving forward kind of way. Yeah. Oh, and then of course the Sacred Chalice. I'm really curious about that. I'm curious as to as Kosuke continues manipulating that virtual monitor he's working with, well, from the ground. It'll just start forming this castle, a fortress, a building of some kind, a temple. I'm looking forward to what it's going to be. And then, of course, the last quote. "What's up, Logomon?" Ig asked, turning towards his distracted Digimon. "Something stinks over here." "But what?" "Gah!" Logomon barked as the area they'd been sniffing suddenly reacted, shifting and reconfiguring the space before them. Where once there was nothing, something began to emerge and take shape. "What did you do, Logomon?" Ichi yelped, visibly flinching. Was all Logomon could get out as they bent over backwards, stunned stiff. So this is where part 6 ends. As always, it always ends in such a way that I'm looking forward to next week's. Last week ended with my curiosity about the digital world. The previous week before that, my curiosity about the cracking of the gateway. The gateway. And now this week, my curiosity about what's going on is, I don't think it's Omegamon, but maybe a temple is forming. Maybe another guide of some kind is forming. Maybe Professor Rosenji is going to reveal that he's actually some kind of Digimon human hybrid. I'm joking. I hope that's not it, but I'm looking forward to what's going on in this instance. It reminds me a little bit of if anyone's ever seen The Expanse, read the books or read the books or watched the show. There's a bit, minor spoilers, but I won't be specific. And there's a bit where they discover this one station, and the station ends up getting an individual and reconfiguring the body to replace and not replace, but to repair. There you go. I was like, it's not heal. Healing is for biological beings, but repair. There you go. Repairs for inanimate objects. This location uses the body of an individual to repair a portion of it that was destroyed. Literally just takes the body and reconfigures them at a molecular level. This kind of reminds me, but not as scary, right? But the whole, where once there was nothing, something began to emerge and take shape. I'm just really imagining this white floor rippling, kind of like water, and then all of a sudden something coming out from it. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to next week. As always, I feel like that's something I'm constantly saying. I'm also constantly saying I like and appreciate as well. I need to come up with synonyms for that. But as always, I do really appreciate everyone coming along with me for this ride, especially for those who do leave comments. Pardon me, I know for the past couple weeks I've been taking a bit longer to get back to replies. Forgive me about that. Things are starting to get a bit more busier at work, and that's just because of that. But I'm going to do my best to, as always, respond and reply when I can. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. And my question for everyone this week is, what do you think is coming out? Is it a guide? Is it that temple with the sacred chalice containing it? Did Koski, maybe behind Logomon's back, crack that little virtual monitor that he's working on, and that's why the floor is reacting, right? I'll meet everyone here next week for part 7 of Digimon Seekers, chapter 4. Have a great day. Have a prodigious week, and take care, everyone. As always, thank you, and I appreciate you coming along with me.